All right, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another live training. Today we are going over how to lose fat step by step. So I have a little guide I created here to kind of talk about the different things that involve fat loss. We'll talk about how exactly you lose fat, and then we'll talk about, some common mistakes, some quick tips here. I'll be sharing my screen here with you guys. So if you're watching the replay, send me a message. Let me know your biggest takeaway that you got from this video. And like as always, I appreciate you guys always interacting and just engaging and showing up to watch the videos. I hope you get as much value from this as possible. So that being said, let's go ahead and let's get this tab pulled up. So I'm going to share my screen here with you guys. I just have to find the right tab. There we go. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. So I have a couple tabs here opened up. Let me just get this the right way I want to see it. So just a little outline of the things that I want to talk about. So yeah, first off, we have how do we lose fat, right? Fat loss is a unique thing, right? A lot of people a lot of people make the mistake of confusing fat loss and weight loss. Fat loss is not the same as weight loss. Fat loss is only losing fat, right? The process of losing fat is completely different than the process of losing weight. We can lose weight very easily. We do not lose fat easily. We can do something as simple as going to the restroom and we'll lose weight. You go for a run, you lose weight. You don't eat, you temporarily weigh less. As soon as you eat, you're going to weigh more, right? So whenever we want to change our body composition, basically, the way our body is structured, how we look, we want to lose fat. We don't always care too much about losing weight. You can lose fat and not lose weight. That's kind of like a topic for another video, but let's not confuse fat loss with weight loss. So things that do not cause fat loss. There's a lot of myths out there that tell you, do this for fat loss, take this for fat loss. And there's no such thing. There's only one rule for fat loss. So if you ever heard that, okay, take this shake, take this tea, take this cream, do this exercise, do this diet, none of that works. There's only one rule for fat loss. And if you don't know what that is, it's pretty straightforward. If you're not following this, you are not going to be losing fat. You might lose weight, but you're not going to be losing fat, and long term, you're not going to get to the goal that you want to get to. So the one rule for fat loss is a calorie deficit, right? What does that mean? Every time I like to give analogies. Maybe you've watched all the other videos. Our body needs a certain amount of energy to maintain itself, to run itself every single day. Kind of like a car, right? Our body is just like a system of a bunch of different things, just like a car is, right? You don't put fuel into a car's not going to work, right? But it's not only the fuel, you got, the tires, you got the suspension, the transmission, you got everything else that's working to move your car. But without the fuel, car can't work properly, right? So calories are basically just the unit of energy that our body uses, to keep us alive, basically, and just do all the different processes that are involved in being alive. So that's kind of like everything summarized. Your metabolism is your gas for the car, basically. So, walking takes energy, talking takes energy, moving takes energy, breathing takes energy. If you were to just lay down in bed and not do anything for the entire day, your body would still consume energy because it has to do all the processes, digesting food, moving blood around your body, filtering different systems, you know, things like that. And your organs are still always going to be working. So even if you don't do anything, your body is still burning fuel, just like a car that is idle when it's turned on is still using fuel. We don't want to become the car that turns off because that means that we're no longer alive, right? So as long as we're alive, we're going to be continuing to burn energy, right? So number one rule, if you're not following this, if you're not in a calorie deficit, you are not going to be losing fat. You might lose weight, but you're not going to be losing fat. You're not going to get to the goal that you want to get to. Here next, I have a CICO, right? That's just an acronym for calories in, calories out. So this is another kind of thing that people get wrong. You often hear move more, eat less, or eat less, move more, right? So that's not necessarily 100% accurate. The way I like to say is move more than you consume or consume less than you move, right? What I'm talking about there is calories, right? So you move more than you consume, than your calorie consumption, or you consume less calories than you burn through movement, right? So I don't want you guys to think that, oh, I got to go, do all this cardio, do all this exercise in order to burn all these calories, because realistically, you're not going to burn too many calories unless you're running, marathons, right? So about 100 calories are burnt for each mile ran. So in order to burn, 1,000 calories, you need to run 10 miles. And unless you're running 4-minute miles, that's not an efficient way to burn calories, right? Instead, we have to focus on our nutrition, on our diet, and making good changes, sustainable changes, in order to get that long-term success and maintain our weight after we've lost it, right? After we've lost the fat. We don't want to lose the fat only to put it back on. That's what happens when you go on all these different diets, right? There's no special diets. The only thing that works is a calorie deficit. If you do keto and you lost weight, you look different. It's because you're in a calorie deficit. You cut out all the carbs. You no longer have these temptations. So now you're eating relatively better. I still wouldn't say good, but relatively better, because you don't have these temptations. You're not eating cookies, pizza, all the different things that you might enjoy. Same thing with carnivore. You've cut out all the carbs. And it's so weird because carbs is that one food source that we just eat. And you just consume so many calories. Like you get a bag of chips and you just consume so many calories versus, if you sat down and you try to eat like a pound of chicken, you probably wouldn't be able to eat that. Or, you get like some vegetables, like let's say you get some broccoli. You're not going to eat a pound of broccoli. You're going to get really full before you finish that. So, kind of lost my train of thought getting back to it. Yeah. So, move more than you consume, or consume less than you move, right? Without emphasizing too much on the exercise. We do want to be active, right? We still want to maintain our heart health. We still want to maintain cardiovascular health. So we do want to have some activity. We just don't want it to be the leading factor for our fat loss. The leading factor for our fat loss should come through our nutrition, right? So that goes into your TDEE. How do you figure out your TDEE? TDEE basically stands for total daily energy expenditure, right? Total daily energy expenditure takes in a lot of different things, right? It's going to be your basal metabolic rate, basically meaning the amount of calories your body burns at rest. Other things like thermic effect of food. That basically just means the amount of energy your body burns by digesting food. Something called NEAT, N-E-A-T. It's an acronym for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Basically, any movements that you do throughout the day that are not on purpose, that is just automatic, right? So here right now, I'm talking. Most of the movements that I'm making are just automatic. I'm not really thinking too much about it. And then things like, your organs working throughout the day, also another form of needs. Maybe you walking to your car. Anything that's not dedicated to exercise is going to be non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And ultimately, the last one is exercise activity thermogenesis, or EAT, EAT, another acronym. And that's, as it says, anything that you burn, calories burnt through exercise, right? The biggest one is going to be your BMR, and then your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Those two are going to be the bigger ones in the impact on how many calories you burn throughout the day. So I wouldn't try to burn calories through movement, because you can only burn so many. Whenever you do that, your body compensates, you move less throughout the day. So your non-exercise activity, the things that you do automatically that's not exercise, is going to come down, right? So you're going to have a compensation there. So you don't want to be over exercising. You're ultimately just gonna compensate, right? Your body's smart like that. Your body doesn't want to lose the fat, doesn't want to lose weight. It wants to maintain itself, and it wants to stay where it's at, right? You've probably heard of homeostasis. It wants to stay in that environment it's in, right? So how do you figure out your total daily energy expenditure? There's a couple ways, 3 different ways. There's no real right and wrong. There's only, are you looking for something more faster? Are you looking for something that's more accurate? Or are you just trying to figure it out, right? So the first way to calculate your total daily energy expenditure is through a calculator. I think I can go ahead here and show you guys. So yeah, let me show you this right here. If we go into Google and don't mind my, I was making a video, so tdeecalculator.net, right? This is very, very common for people to use to find their calorie consumption, right? So here, I don't like to rely too much on calculators because they can be inaccurate, but they can give you estimated guess on what you might need, right? So I'm going to put in my information. We're going to get spit out. It's going to spit out a number. So I am 23 years old currently. Last time I weighed myself, I weighed 165, but let's just say 166. I am 5'7". So activity, this one is going to be very important. It's going to vary. It's going to change the amount of calories that you are going to need to maintain your weight. So if you're someone who's more active, you're going to be burning more calories throughout the day. If you're someone who's less active, your overall calorie burn is going to be lower. So if you have an office job, you're going to burn less calories than if you were an athlete, burning a lot of calories just through the movement, through the exercise that you're doing. So I work out a couple of times a week. So let's just go right in the middle because I'm not a full-blown athlete, but I'm also not completely sedentary. I like to, incorporate different exercise. So let's go with moderate exercise. Let's calculate that. All right, so it gives us a number here. According to my stats, you're a 23-year-old male who is 166 pounds and 5'7" with moderate exercise. You also have the option to put in your body fat percentage if you know that. That's a little bit more advanced. I know mine, but I don't want to get into that. So, all right, here we go. Your maintenance calories, you are at 2,645 calories per day. 18,516 per week, right? So daily, I would need to consume 2,645 according to the information I put in to maintain my weight, right? If I wanted to lose weight, I would have to eat under this. So whenever you're losing weight, I always try to recommend anywhere from 300 to 500 calorie deficit, just depending on the speed that you want your fat loss to go into. You can do a little bit more of an aggressive fat loss, but that's going to take someone who knows kind of what they're doing. You can get away with it if you're someone who has a higher starting point. But generally, I would recommend around that 500 calorie deficit per day. So if I want to continue losing weight, I would have to eat 2,145 calories per day. Pretty good number calorie right there. And I want to talk about this right here, and then we'll go back to my other slide. So it says BMI score of 26. My BMI says I am overweight, right? So if you see this and you're someone who is generally healthy, you work out, this doesn't mean that you are automatically overweight. This is just a measurement system that they have. And sometimes it'll say you're overweight, but in reality, you might be overweight because you have more muscle, right? You're not necessarily overweight as an obese, right? Usually as you get into those higher numbers, that obese category is a little bit more accurate. But at 166 pounds, 157, I would say I'm very much healthy and probably a little bit overweight just because of the muscle that I carry. So yeah, and then we have a little bit here, macronutrients. This is a topic for another day, but you know, we'll go into it a little bit here moving forward. So this is tdeecalculator.net. If you guys want to use that, very easy, very simple. Just plug that in. You'll get your maintenance calories. If you do this, send me a message. Let me know what your personal maintenance calories are. Make sure you put in your age, your sex, your weight, your height, and then your activity level. You can exclude the body fat percentage. It might be a little bit more accurate with the body fat percentage, but not a big deal. It's just an educated guess, like I said. So here we go. All right, so we're back here to our old slide or our old tab. Yeah, so calculating your calories is one of the faster, more efficient ways to do it. It's not necessarily the most accurate. The second one is to track your calories throughout an extended amount of time and then seeing how your weight moves, right? This one's going to take a lot more time. Um, I would say if you do this, give it a month and see, at what calorie amount you're consuming. Take an average of the 7 days, take an average of the entire month, and say, okay, or do the weekly average, and then look at that week to week because some days you're just going to eat more naturally. So get the average of the week and say, okay, what was the average and what is my weight doing, right? So you would have to write it down on a piece of paper, write it down on your notes app, and kind of see the trend. If it's trending downwards and you lost 5 pounds in 1 month, that means you are in a deficit, right? If your weight is staying pretty much the same, it'll drop, maybe half a pound, it'll go up maybe a pound or two, but it comes back down to, a baseline number, then that means that's your maintenance. If it's going up, if you're trending up, let's say, I always like to give it a little bit of room to work with. So if by the end of the month you gained 3, 4, maybe 5 pounds, that's probably telling us you are in a surplus, meaning you're consuming more calories than your body needs. So your body is now storing that excess energy as body fat, right? The tracking method is going to be the more accurate method. And this is going to take more time, right? So calculating is fast, easy, efficient, but not as accurate. It's just an estimated guess. Tracking is not as time friendly, but is a lot more accurate because you actually get to figure out the calorie amount that you need on a day-to-day basis. So the last one is trial and error, which is what most people do. They just eat and they just kind of look at the scale and say, okay, what is the scale doing? Cool. They're not tracking anything. They're just eating here, eating this food, cutting out this, eating this food, cutting out that, or introducing this food into their diet. And then they just look at the scale and say, okay, what is my weight doing, right? Not to say that that's a right or wrong approach. It's just what most people do. Ultimately, for most people, not getting them to their goals, right? We don't want to do that. We want to have a plan. I posted recently in the group about having a plan versus not having a plan. If you show up to a shooting, a gun range with a gun, but you have nowhere to aim or you don't have a model to shoot at, then you're just shooting randomly. You don't really know what you're doing. You want to make sure you have a plan, that you can execute it over time, tick off the boxes, and move in the direction that you want to ultimately move in. So those are 3 ways to figure out your TDEE. Like I said before, in order to lose fat, you need to be in a calorie deficit. So for me, it's at 2,600 calories. I need to be in a calorie deficit to lose fat. So I'd have to eat under that, right? Depending on the speed of which you want to see results, you either go slower or you go faster, right? They both have their benefits. That's another topic for another day. So quick tips to make fat loss easier. So a couple things we can do to make fat loss easier is first, food volume. What does that mean? So whenever you're eating food, you want to eat foods that are filling and less foods that are not as filling. Like I said earlier, eating a bag of chips has a ton of calories. You're not going to be losing fat if you're eating a whole bag of chips, like a family-sized bag of chips every single day. Actually, you can if you're in a deficit, but I don't want to steer you guys the wrong way. So I would generally try to avoid doing that. It's not as healthy as well. Just because you're losing weight doesn't mean that you're healthy in the long term, because you could still develop health issues if you are over consuming too many, I guess, lower nutritional foods. So food volume. Okay, again, what does that mean? We want to be eating foods that are filling, that satisfy us whenever we eat, that whenever we are losing fat, we don't feel hunger, right? Hunger is going to be a natural process as you're losing fat, but we can minimize that by eating voluminous food. So that could be eating foods like proteins that are lower in calories, higher in protein, something like a lean meat, something like fish, lean turkey, lean chicken, and then you can get different cuts, right? So for chicken, you can get the breast, the thigh. You can do a lot of other cuts. Organ meats are actually pretty good too. I've had liver in the past, and it's actually not too bad, and it has great macronutrients. Tastes really good. So food volume is the way to go. Other foods could be like vegetables. You can eat a lot of vegetables and not accumulate as many calories, right? But like I said, we want to introduce balance. We don't want to be just eating things and then feeling bad about ourselves, feeling shitty. If you are not enjoying it, if you feel like you're starting to push against it, then we have to change our approach, right? So we want to make sure, like I said again, we're eating food that is higher in volume. So generally, we want to avoid overly processed foods. Anything that comes in a package, in a bag, we want to tend to stay away from that. Things like chips, things like sodas. Instead, let's go for the alternatives that are not overly processed. So if you eat a bag of potato chips, instead of eating a bag of potato chips, just make the potato chips at home. So, cut up the potato, put it in the oven. How do you say it? Bake it, and then you get the chips, right? You could season it and everything. Don't go too crazy with the oils and all that. But you can season it, and there you go. You have your chips at home. Home cooking is the way to go, honestly. It's another tip here. Home cooking, seasoning, great way to lose fats a lot easier. Next tip is macro goals. That just means macronutrient goals. So whenever we're losing fats, we want to make sure we're eating high protein. That way we're maximizing the amount of fat that we're losing. We don't want to be losing muscle as we're losing fat. Ultimately, that's just going to lead to weight loss. Sure, the scale will go down, but physically you will not look the same if you have more muscle at the end of your quote unquote diet versus having more muscle. You're going to look completely different with less muscle versus more muscle. You're going to have that skinny fat look, as a lot of people say. So having macro goals is going to help out a lot. I wouldn't worry too much about the carbs and the fats. You do need a certain amount of fats just for optimal hormone health. But usually most people do a good job of getting those in. If you do have issues with that, that's something we can discuss personally. But I guess just as a point of reference, you would want 0.3 to 0.5 grams per pound of body weight. And that changes as you lower down in weight. So next one is liking versus disliking food. Kind of like I said before, if you're eating food that is just not, it's not satisfying you in terms of like the taste, the flavor, maybe it's just not doing it for you. We want to make the change to where you're still enjoying your foods. You're not like just stuffing your face and trying to eat foods just for the sake of eating. You want to make sure you're still enjoying your foods, right? That's where we have different cooking styles. We have different preparation styles. We have different seasonings, right? We introduce different condiments. We don't want to go too crazy with all the different things, but the different preparation styles, right? Instead of deep frying, maybe we can bake it instead of cooking it in oil. Maybe we can air fry it, right? Not to say that oil is bad, but if you're someone who uses a lot of oil, that can add up very easily over time. And yeah, just preparation style. If you're someone who doesn't season their food a lot, I would start seasoning it with a lot of different seasons. Of course, you never can go wrong with salt. You can do all bunch of other seasonings. It just really depends on your liking. So if you have any questions on that, feel free to send me a message. But we want to make sure that you are at least enjoying your food during your fat loss, because it's going to keep you more consistent, right? The food can be bland or it can be delicious. You just can't have your cake and eat it too, right? You can't have overly delicious food to where it's like deep fried and mixed with all these condiments. That's not going to work for us. It's going to make our process a lot harder. You're probably already doing that. You're eating a bunch of overly processed foods. They're tasty, they taste good, you really enjoy them, but you are at the body weight that you're at right now because of that. And we have to make the healthy change to ultimately get the body that we want, get the health we want, but we don't have to sacrifice everything in order to get there. So that's also another topic for another day. A lot of these different things are complete topics I can go into for another day. So if you guys want to see a little bit more about that, I can also do that. Things to limit, kind of touched up on that already. Overly processed foods, we want to avoid liquid calories. If you're someone who likes to drink juices or sodas, very, very easy to overconsume that. You have 2 to 3 sodas a day. That's almost maybe 2.5 meals that you are consuming just through that. And it's very easy to consume liquid calories. So we want to be avoiding that. We want to be limiting alcohol as much as possible. I like to say, don't cut it out completely if it's a part of your life. But optimally, health-wise, you would want to not have it at all. There is new research to suggest that just one serving of alcohol does have detrimental effects for your health. So if you can cut it out completely, I think your health would really thank you for that. But of course, I realize that for some people it's just a social thing. So just be smart with the way you consume your alcohol, your drinks. Don't go too crazy with it. Limit yourself to two, maybe uh, three servings per outing, whatever it is. But that's another big one. But yeah, like I said, avoiding overly processed foods. We don't want to be over consuming things like potato chips, things like that are packaged, pastries, all those things. Like I said, that's not to say that you can't have them. We just don't want to be over consuming them, right? So if you have one at breakfast, cool, right? Maybe you have one at breakfast, and then maybe you have an even smaller serving at dinner. As long as we're meeting our goals as far as calories go, we're good. I just don't want you guys to be drinking soda and then be having like bags of chips and then be eating like pizza over an entire day. You're not going to be it's going to be a lot harder to lose weight that way. So like I said, that's another topic for another day we can go into, but just limiting those foods, limiting those drinks is going to help out a lot. Another big mistake that people make is eating healthy foods and expecting to lose weight. Just because you're eating healthy foods does not automatically put you in a deficit. You could be eating things that are high in calories like fats, and that's going to put you out of a deficit. That's not to say that you're not eating healthy. You're probably healthy in terms of like, physicality, but in order to see that weight loss, you're going to have to go into a deficit, right? Just because you're eating healthy foods does not automatically put you in deficit. But it is easier to lose fat while eating healthy foods versus eating not so healthy foods or less nutritional foods, right? Fun foods. So we want to make sure that we're actually in a deficit and that we're not just thinking, oh, I'm eating healthy at every meal. I'm not losing weight. What's going wrong? What's going on? You're simply just not in a deficit. And like I said before, we figure that out using a calculator tracking, or you're probably already doing it, just trial and error. So if you're not seeing any results, that's why we're here. Reach out to me, send me a message, let me know what's going on, and I'm open to help you. Yeah, and then so time frame. Time frame is a very, very big one. Expecting to see results very quickly in a short amount of time. It's not going to happen with fat loss. You can lose a lot of weight quickly, but you can't lose fat quickly. I like to put it as almost an equation. There's a certain amount of fat we can lose that's recommended a week. That's 1 to 2 pounds a week. If you're someone who's starting off at a higher point in your journey, 1% per week is a good recommendation. So if you're someone who's wanting to lose 50 pounds, 1 to 2 pounds a week would be 25 to 50 weeks. I usually like to say 50 and sometimes even more, because that assumes you're having everything perfectly laid out. You're following your plan 100% of the time. Nothing is coming up. You're having no issues. You have no events that you're going to. You are eating exactly the amount of calories that you're eating. You don't go off plan, which is fine. We can do that for whatever reason. You don't get sick. You don't get invited out to an outing. That's assuming all of those different things. So realistically, we can lose in 50 weeks, basically a year, but it might take more. And then the even longer part of it, longer aspect, is maintaining that weight. So I always like to say, let's give it the same amount of time to make sure we don't gain the weight. So a year of weight loss and then a year of maintenance, just to make sure you don't put that weight back on, right? A couple other mistakes that people make, I mentioned a little bit earlier, is exercising or doing cardio in order to lose fat. Over relying on exercise, big mistake. Do not do that. You're going to put a lot of effort into it. You're going to burn yourself out, and then you're going to want to quit. So I'm just telling you this now. Don't do it. I kind of talked about it here. Patience, time frame, just giving it enough time. If you have 50 pounds to lose, you can lose it in less than 50 weeks, but it might take longer, and that's okay. But just being patient. Fat loss is a long-term play. It's not something that just happens from one day to another, right? And like I said before, consistency, just how often are you sticking to your plan? How consistent are you being day to day, week to week, month to month? If you're having days where you're going off plan, that's okay. If we plan ahead of that, if we plan it in the plan, but going off of it because you had an off day or something like that, or you just, you know, maybe you overindulged one day, um, that's gonna, you know, set the timeline off. That's not to say that you did anything bad. It's just what happens, and we have to now plan with that, plan around that. So, and then ultimately, if you're not losing fat, you're not following rule number one, you're not in a calorie deficit. And I think, yeah, that pretty much goes over all the things that I want to talk about today. If you have any questions on anything, if you have any topics that you'd like me to talk about, go over, feel free to send me a message. I'll be sharing this replay with you guys. Leave down any comments you have. Like I said, any questions, any recommendations, and thanks again always for interacting in the group, showing up in the group, asking questions. Yeah, and so I will see you on the next training. You guys have a good day, good night, whenever you're watching this.